So you've been bitten by the astrology bug, you're inspired, you're impassioned, you feel very strongly about astrology, you're ready to learn more, you want to dive deeper. How do you do it? How do you learn fast? That's what this video is about. Stay tuned. So the first thing I'd like to say on this topic is that there really isn't a shortcut to learning astrology. You're going to have to put in the time and the energy and put in the hours to become a great astrologer. And that's the first point here, is that one needs to be inspired. One needs to have an inner drive to learn a topic. And without that inspiration and inner drive, you're not going to have the fuel that's going to keep you going, that's going to keep you curious and keep you going down rabbit holes to understand astrological techniques, to put in the thinking power and the education time that you'll need to learn. So inspiration is the key. And this is why I believe, and others, that some astrologers are born in a way because they're born with the drive to want to learn it. They're almost led to the path, and then they put in the time and energy. I mean, think about anything you've done in your life. Have you done things without wanting to do it? Usually those things don't last or don't stick around. And so it's good to just check in with yourself. Are you inspired? Where is the motivation to learn coming from? Is it an organic inner sense that I have to do this because you're driven by some other forces, or maybe there's pressure from others? But whatever it is, it's good just checking in before you devote so much time and energy to your practice and to your education with your motivations. And then the last thing I'll say on this point is that this is, I believe some people are fated. You know, this is the path for some individuals to become an astrologer, to work with astrological techniques, to open those practices up to clients. It's what some of us are meant to be doing in this life. And if that's you, that's wonderful. I think a lot of this video will apply to you. And if that's not you and you're just an enthusiast or just curious, stay tuned, continue to watch, because there's a lot of good ideas here. So the second point is that there are many, many, many free resources online. You can learn so much for free, for nothing, just with a computer and an internet connection, or just with a phone and a cell phone plan, data plan. But there's websites, articles, innumerable websites and articles. And the task here, I think, is sifting through the high quality stuff. I like a beginner's course on astro.com. They have a very nice just beginner's course. It's maybe 20-30 minutes to go through. There's several sections where you can learn about all of the fundamental building blocks of the astrological system, the Western system. But that will give you a beginning working vocabulary. And then from there you can use Google and Google searches, and even Google Books, which is a free repository of many books with previews, Internet Archive or Internet Database. They have many, many free astrology books. So there's an infinite number of free resources, and you can just start exploring those with search engines to find resources that you enjoy. Like I said, I like astro.com as a foundation website because even their beginner section, while short, is one of the things they have. They also have many articles from well-recognized astrologers, very interesting astrological thought of the highest order. And that's one way to learn, is you read an article and then you start searching the terminology that is discussed in an article and the concepts that are discussed in the article to go deeper. So you use the resources you begin with as a jumping off place for the next resource, and that is a jumping off place for the next resource. And then you're finding and sifting your way through everything that's available on the internet. But starting with astro.com, I think, is a really good starting place. There's the section that's like articles or newly published articles. They curate those articles from different astrological publications like the Mountain Astrologer, which has some of the best astrologers in the world. Start there and start digging through those free resources. The other big free resource, and this is what I did, as soon as I knew I was going to learn astrology and go all in with it, I went straight to my local libraries. And I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. We had the University of Texas Library, the Austin Public Library. Those two libraries were chock full of many, 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 many books. And I found some real winners and some real gems. And I read through them really as fast as I could, and it brought me up to speed quite quickly. From there, I was able to then start discovering new sections of the astrology world, eventually finding the areas that I've specialized in and the texts that I really rely on. But public libraries are a free resource. find those in your city. Look for the universities and for the state-operated public libraries. So 3 books that I will recommend now. One of those I did find at the Austin Public Library, and so the first book is this book by Kevin Burke. It's called Astrology, Understanding the Birth Chart. This book by Kevin Burke is a really nicely written text. It's very clear. It's broken up into clean sections that are easy to digest. He covers the basics of rulership, which is a foundation piece of astrology. In this book is where I learned about dispositor trees, which have become essential to how I practice astrology and how I look at an astrological chart when I see it. And so it's right here in this Kevin Burke book. Highly recommended. The second book I will recommend is a book by Demetra George called Astrology and the Authentic Self. The reason why I love this book is that it is full of some example charts. She takes one nativity all the way through the book and applies the techniques that she's teaching. And so you really can see the application of technique from a master astrologer. Every astrologer has different ways that they apply techniques, but it's a case in point. It's a great example of seeing what this master astrologer, Demetra George, does and how she works. The other thing I like about it is she's broken down some of the core pieces of the astrological system into easily digestible bites. The planets, the houses, she goes through them and conveys their meaning in a very simplistic and usable way. So that's the second book. The third book is a book by Benjamin Dykes, Traditional Astrology for Today. And this is Ben Dykes' basic traditional astrology book. It's short. It's kind of like a glossary or a summary of some of the systems in the ancient world, in the Hellenistic and medieval world, and how those traditional concepts are rich and how they can be utilized. And you'll read this book by Ben Dykes and see that the traditional systems form the basis of those modern systems. And it's always good to go back and learn the systems that you came from. Now, these 3 books are all fairly short. They're fairly accessible, cleanly written, and they're just overviews. I'm recommending these 3 as introductory texts. These are not the texts if I was looking to go deep. There's some other texts I would probably recommend. Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology is more of a tome. That might be for an advanced student. But these 3 are books that I highly recommend for beginners. And then the other advanced texts I would recommend are the actual ancient texts translated into English. You can get them free online. Firmicus Maternus, Ptolemy, Dorotheus. There's some others, Vedius Valens. That's the more advanced approach that I would take. But those 3 books are great for the beginners. So the next tip, learn the planets as an essential fundamental building block. And I recommend here learning the significations of the 7 traditional planets as a foundation of the whole structure of our astrological system, because the signs of the zodiac and their significations actually derive from, as a root, the 7 traditional planets. And once you have mastered in a basic way what the 7 traditional planets mean, then you can start mixing planetary significations and building a whole range of meaning with our astrological system. You know, the planets are the background of aspect theory. Planets serve as justification or inform the meaning of the houses. And so starting with the planets is ideal, in my opinion. I recommend that. Any text you get, go to the section where it says, what do the planets mean? And study those and start working with those. So the next point is get some astrology software. And this doesn't have to be advanced software. Again, it can be free software. You can get up and running only with astro.com, only with astroseek.com. There's some very well-respected astrologers with robust consultation practices that only use astro.com. I know that for a fact. It's free. There's a paid model where you get access to saving charts. You may want to use that paid model. Astroseek.com has a membership model too. So you can pay for those memberships if you can afford it and if you think they're valuable. But just the free astro.com software will give you access to a whole range of tools that will allow you to start applying the techniques that you're reading about, and a whole range of example charts. Astro.com has a searchable database of nativities of all kinds, and you can search it using markers like profession and various aspects or planetary placement. So it's an excellent resource, astro.com. Astroseek.com I like for the advanced traditional techniques that you can run through astroseek.com. But those two free websites are A+ in my view. And if you're going to want to pay for some software, the software I would recommend, SolarFire for Windows and AstroGold for Mac, or AstroGold for either Android or Mac OS on your mobile. I use SolarFire on my Windows machine, then I have AstroGold on my Android, and AstroGold's great for on-the-go astrology. I was just hanging out with some friends in a social environment when they found that I was an astrologer. They all wanted little mini readings, and I was in the mood to give a few mini readings. I tell people, look, I'm not going to give you to do a full reading is a much more serious moment that requires almost a sacred space that's created for an hour or more. But I'm dropping a few little hints about someone's birth chart, a few little gems of insight. I can pull up AstroGold at a dinner or party and do it that way. Or I always use it to check in with what's happening in the sky where I am at any given moment. It's very convenient as it's right on the phone. But the software allows you to visualize the planets, work with the techniques you're learning. That's the most important principle here. Having software gets you access to tools. We need tools as astrologers to visualize techniques, to visualize planetary placements and planets. So start getting familiar with some software. And then the next point I would say is join community. I just published a video on community a couple of weeks ago, but find some community, whatever that looks like for you. I like Twitter. I advocate Twitter. There's a very wide range of astrological voices on Twitter. You can engage with astrologers. They will respond. You can use Reddit, you can use YouTube comments, you can use Discord. I think there's some astrology servers. You can use a whole host of communities, NovaNet, the new community that just launched, which has an amazing forum. So you can use a community. The reason why it's important is you'll learn faster by talking to others, throwing your ideas out with other people. Hey, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm seeing. They give you feedback, and you can sort of dance with others and expand your vocabulary and expand your skill set. It also gives you potential clients in the sense of practice clients. The more astrology friends you have, the more you might do some reading exchanges and practice your consultation chops. And then the next point here is using example charts. Once you learn a few techniques, and this is what I always tell people, find 1, 2, or 3, just a few techniques that you start liking and feeling comfortable with and that you've seen being useful. How do you know if a technique's useful? You have to test it on your own chart. That's probably the best learning tool, but also on charts of friends or charts of historical figures. We can constantly be running charts through the reality, the factual reality that's unfolding, whether from a history book or from your own life. So be working with example charts always as you're learning, and you'll find intuitively, hey, this technique works. I really love analyzing, let's say, the house Jupiter's in the nativity. I feel like that's given me a lot of good stuff, or aspects are maybe really important for your practice. You'll find you really like to look at closely applying aspects that have a small orb, but you have to apply techniques to charts in order to know what few techniques you're going to use and adopt as kind of your pet techniques, or the ones that are your favorites. And then I'm going to close with this point. You're always learning. And so the video here, Learn Fast, is kind of a misnomer in a way. We're always students of astrology. It's always teaching us. You have to stay open, in my opinion. I have to stay open to what the universe, what these unseen forces, what the astrology gods are wanting me to learn. Where do they want to take me in terms of my astrology practice? And I find my skills build on themselves. So one box of practices that I've really loved before becomes a key node in an application or a creative application of a few new techniques. That's where it really starts getting good, as you stay open, you stay learning. But when you start making connections between texts or techniques and other texts and techniques, and then chart examples in real time, and you're forming new theories of astrology, that's when you really become an astrologer, in my view. And plus, when you start working with clients, if that's your goal, that's also when you really can say, hey, I am an actual astrologer, I'm doing this. People come to me and I'm giving them something of value with the astrological techniques that I've learned. So those are my tips for learning astrology fast, or just learning astrology. Get busy with it. And it's nice to see all of you astrologers out there, and we're one big family. It's a big community of practitioners, and I'm just honored to be a part of it. This is S.J. Anderson. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to my channel. You can support me by liking and subscribing the video. You can always go to my website, sjanderson144.com, and schedule an astrology reading, a tarot reading, or you can support my Patreon. Helps keep the videos going. Have an awesome day. Talk soon.